Joining us now, Eylon Levy is a former Israeli national spokesman, as well as Ruthie Bloom. She's a former Netanyahu advisor and a co-host of Israel Undiplomatic podcast on Jewish News Syndicate TV. Welcome to you both. Appreciate your joining us. Ruthie, you heard that report from Alex Salvi live in Israel. How hopeful are you about the agreement?
Well, I'm like everybody else, like all Israelis, I'm praying that it'll go through. But, you know, Hamas, this is a monstrous organization. You cannot trust it. Every 2 minutes, as soon as it sees the opportunity to say, wait, it depends, we'll return this many if you do that. The beauty of this deal, which I don't call a peace deal, I'm sorry, using the word peace in this context is really cynical. It isn't peace. Whatever we have with Hamas will be maybe an end to this war, hopefully victory over Hamas, but not peace. And perhaps with the Arab nations that are sitting down with Trump and trying to pressure Hamas, there will be some kind of, let's say, expanded Abraham Accords. But you have to remember that both Qatar and Turkey are pro-Hamas. So I'm doubtful about that. In any case, the trouble here, the beauty of this deal, let's put it that way, is that the onus is on Hamas. Both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu agree that finally what we're saying is first you return the hostages and then we'll negotiate the rest of it. So let's see if that works. We're all praying that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Eylon, even with the possibility of a resolution, it's important not to forget the tragedy of October 7th, 2023. Take us back to that horrific day. Where were you, and how did you first hear what was happening?
Like millions of Israelis, I understood something was wrong when I was woken up in the morning by missile sirens. I had to run downstairs into the bomb shelter in the basement of my apartment because we were under missile attack. Hamas had fired hundreds of missiles at Israel in the first hours. And it took a while for Israelis to understand and grasp the true horror of what was happening. First, the media reported reports of terrorists infiltrating Israel, then reports of dozens killed, then reports of perhaps hostages. And it took days for the real death toll to come to light, and also the real sadism of Hamas's atrocities. They tortured people. They mutilated them before killing them. They mutilated their bodies. They beheaded people. They perpetrated the most barbaric acts of sexual violence. People hid under dead bodies to survive. Hamas abducted people after trying to blow them limb from limb inside concrete shelters. This was an act of extreme sadism. And now, on the anniversary of October 7th, Israelis are reliving that trauma and remembering the fear on the day that we were invaded by Hamas, and on the day it called on Iran's other proxy armies around the Middle East to join the fighting and launch a seven-front war against Israel. So we're reliving that trauma of the sadistic atrocities perpetrated by Hamas, and hoping that the living nightmare that Hamas started 2 years ago might finally be coming to an end.
Yeah, Eylon, thank you so much for recounting that. Ruthie, similar question to you. Where were you on that day?
Well, like Eylon, I was awoken by sirens. In fact, Eylon and I live very near one another and very near the square you just showed on your news broadcast. Not hostages, Square Dizengoff Square. Mm-hmm. And I was awoken. And again, we're used to having periodical fights with Hamas, with missiles flying. And I thought, oh no, this is a repeat of 2021 when Hamas attacked us. None of us had realized right at the beginning that this was one of the worst atrocities ever committed. But I can tell you that my own children, my son suddenly got his uniform on and went down south. He hadn't even been called up to the reserves, but he got on his uniform and he went to his unit. And the same thing with my son-in-law. And when I later asked them, how did you know to do that if you hadn't been called up to the reserves? And my son said, we'd been training for this. He saw the white pickup trucks and the motorcycles that Hamas were riding. We saw that on television because Hamas was filming itself committing these atrocities. And so I have to say that when this is all said and done, and when there is an investigation, we'd all like to know, how is that possible that he was training for something like that, and we were taken by surprise that the army didn't arrive for hours and hours and hours to rescue those people in the kibbutzim along the Gaza border.
Well, we do know that the impact of October 7th is far from over. Today, an estimated 20 living hostages remain in captivity, enduring starvation and torture. President Trump says he is confident they will be freed, though.
They've been fighting for a plan for years. We get the hostages back almost immediately. Negotiations are going on right now. Will probably take a couple of days, and people are very happy about it.
Eylon, many are confident in President Trump, but are you confident knowing the deadly games that Hamas plays?
I would not put it past Hamas to have a nasty trick up its sleeve and force us back into this war. Hamas does not want to end the war. And let's be clear, President Trump's plan for peace is for peace without Hamas, not with Hamas. This plan is a plan for Hamas to accept defeat. Hamas in Egypt now is negotiating the terms of its surrender and its dismantling. And so it all depends on whether global pressure will be kept up on Hamas and whether Hamas's state sponsors, specifically Qatar and Turkey, which have been encouraging it throughout this war, really put their foot down and say, it's game over. You have to free the hostages. You have to relinquish power, and you have to lay down your arms. It depends on them. And if they cannot be allowed to let Hamas wriggle out of ending the war, there must be pressure on them to pressure Hamas to accept defeat and put this war behind us.
Ruthie, we don't have too much time left, but I'm curious to get your perspective here. We're learning about a major development. Several armed militia groups in Gaza have broken with Hamas and are now publicly backing President Trump's plan. Your reaction to this?
Well, that's a very good sign, and we really hope that that's one of the things that's going to happen, is that Hamas is overthrown internally and not just by pressure from President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, etc. But, you know, you have to understand that a lot of those groups as well, I mean, I hate to burst your bubble, but a lot of those groups as well, those armed groups are militias that they may be against Hamas, but they are certainly not pro-West or pro-Israel.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. And again, appreciate your both joining us on this day. Eylon Levy, Ruthie Bloom, thank you.
Thank you, Krisha.